Hey, honey, what do you think about adopting the 4-day work week?
Oh, it sounds great to me.
So we'll work Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Friday. How does that sound?
Great, wonderful, fabulous.
Well, we have our guest today is Joe Sanok. He's a counselor and therapist. He effectively grew and sold his practice, incorporating the 4-day work week.
Oh, I love it. That's a great idea.
So he wrote a book on the topic. It's called Thursday's the New Friday. I'm diving in. It's great. It's got some great insights like, why do we even work 5 days a week? Where did that come from?
I was wondering the same thing.
And can you be productive, just as productive, working less? Because just because you're working more, putting more time in, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more done.
Exactly. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And have you noticed, like, if you're on a time crunch, like you're going on a trip or something, how we are so much more productive than we've had all this time to get things done, and you wait till the last minute?
Yeah, because
Christmas, we get it all done.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Is because we focus in and just really put aside any distractions, right?
Right.
We get more focused. And so that's kind of the basis of what he's going to talk about. But he gives some practical tips, because definitely I've got some questions as I'm looking into the book, like the how-to, how do we do this? And so he gives some great insight into why we even do what we do, and question why we do what we do, and can we do it better is the big thing.
Yeah, and I'm excited about learning how to be more productive.
Yeah, because we're all about work-life balance. And so this definitely falls right in the wheelhouse of work-life balance, of how can we accomplish more in less time and do the things we love to do, even though we love our job, we love our business, but there's a lot of things we want to do outside of it too.
Right, and it's great to have some downtime, isn't it? Because that seems like that's when the creativity kind of strikes me, at least.
Yeah, so you ready? You got some questions ready for Joe?
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, let's get going. Let's let Joe in. Welcome to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. We're your hosts, Robert and Kaylee Fukui. I know we're supposed to say we created this podcast for you, but we really created this for us. Because one of the power struggles we witnessed growing up and now dealing with in the present is balancing the needs of the business with priorities of marriage. Does this sound familiar?
As children of entrepreneurs, we're often on the receiving end of that struggle. Parents worked so hard to provide that they did not have time for us. We realized it wasn't their fault. They did only what they knew. But not wanting to repeat the past, we've been intentional about building a business that we run as opposed to it running us.
Every day we fight to keep the priorities the priority: faith, family, and finance, or the business. Some think it's impossible, but we say it's possible. You just need to challenge the false belief that a successful business only comes at the sacrifice of your family. It doesn't have to happen that way, and we know we're not the only couple to think this way and achieve it.
If you listen to some of our past episodes and tune in for future ones, you will hear from some amazing marriage experts and entrepreneur couples that have been able to build a thriving marriage and prosperous business at the same time.
So that's why we created this podcast, to be in the front row and hear from others that have gone before us. And from time to time, we'll share what has worked for us as well. But we know there's more to learn and want to take you along for the ride with us. We may never get it perfect, but with intention, we can all build a thriving marriage and prosperous business. So thank you for listening. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's power up your marriage and business. All right, well, here we are with Joe. Thank you for showing up today. We're really excited for this.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hang out with you guys again. Thanks for being on my show.
Yeah,
we had a great time.
Yeah, our interview with you just aired this week too. Went live this week, so definitely got to go to the practice podcast, the practice of the practice podcast. But we're here today, really exciting topic, because this is right in our wheelhouse. We help married entrepreneurs have better work-life balance. So you definitely want to win in business, but you definitely have to have a life, right?
Yeah,
and
100%.
So this topic of the 4-day work week is great. Although I did have a little flub before recording and call it the 4-hour work week, which I think I'm just being prophetic about this. But anyways, let's take off just one step at a time. But so this concept of the 4-day work week, where did that start? Is that just something that's been on your mind for a long time, or how did this come about?
Yeah, what's interesting is, when I was looking at putting together a book proposal, I brought in a writing coach to help me really sort through, what things am I teaching that are unique to me, and what are things that I've heard other people say and I'm kind of regurgitating, because book publishers don't want you to just say what someone else has said. And so we spent about a year really kind of working through what was unique. And one thing it brought me back to was the 4-day work week. I remember back in college when I was at my freshman orientation, and we're sitting there with our academic advisors, and there's like 6 or 7 of us making our schedules. And I raised my hand and I said, do I have to go to class on Friday? And the advisor said, this is college, do whatever you want. And so throughout all of undergrad, I only had one class. It was a required class that only met on Fridays at 8 a.m. That was the only class that I ever had on a Friday. And so as I reflected, that even my very first job that I had out of graduate school as a psychologist, I negotiated a 4-day work week for that brand new job, fresh out of grad school. When I was working with wraparound and community mental health, I worked a 4.5-day work week. And so it was something that even when I was in regular jobs, I would negotiate to try to have a long weekend every weekend. And then when I had my own business, it was something that I lived throughout I still live it within my business. And so as we were talking in 2019, in the lead up to putting out that proposal, really it was the 4-day work week, Thursday being the new Friday, and how when we slow down, when we focus on life, when we focus on the good things, that we're then more inspired. We do better work. We really can go out there and kill it. And so often we just see that productivity things start with, here's how you get more done, without ever saying, like, why are you even working on that? Like, why is your achievement a part of your ego? All these things that maybe you should slow down and reflect on things a little bit. And then we dug into all the history of the 40-hour work week and just how many of these things go back all the way, to ancient Babylon, and all sorts of interesting kind of trails that we were able to follow within the book too.
Yes, that's interesting. So basically it started in college and it carried into all the way after you graduated and into your business, right? And so you kind of alluded to the history, because I agree, sometimes we just keep doing the same thing over and over again because that's how we do it. Right?
Yeah,
absolutely. And we've never challenged the status quo. So talk to us a little bit about the history, because that really fascinated me, about the history of the 7-day week and then the 40-hour work week.
Yeah. Well, once I got the contract with HarperCollins to write the book, I always like to start with just kind of a blank slate. Sure, we said we're going to write this book. We said, here's what each chapter will look like. But if I just entered with new eyes, like what would those new eyes want to know? So I just started brainstorming on a whiteboard. And I started with, where did the 40-hour week come from? Where did the idea of working 5 days and 2 days off come from? And then it was like, where did the week even come from? Because as I started to think about it, a year is how long it takes the Earth to go around the sun. A day is how long it takes to rotate. Months are loosely associated with the lunar cycle, but a 7-day week has nothing in nature that points to it. And so I started to dig into, where did we get the 7-day week? And actually it was the ancient Babylonians that they looked up, they saw the sun, they looked down, they saw the earth, they saw the moon, and then they could see the brightest other four planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. And they said, okay, there's 7 bright things around us. We should have 7 days. So it literally was bad astronomy that gave us the 7-day week. The Egyptians had an 8-day week. The Romans had a 10-day week. Even as recent as the 1800s, the Russians tried a 5-day week. And so we could just as easily have had 73 weeks in a year that were 5 days in those weeks. And so just starting with this 7-day week that we say is how humanity lives is completely arbitrary. It goes back to some random astronomers in Babylon. And so if we start with that and say, okay, we've never challenged that, I don't think we're going to challenge that, then where did this 40-hour week happen? And so looking at how people were working in the 1800s, the average person was working 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. They were following a farmer's schedule, even if they lived in big cities and all sorts of other areas. And in the late 1800s, there was a bunch of protests happening in Chicago in the Haymarket area. And in 1886, there was this huge protest that happened. All the people were protesting because they had moved from Europe to try to rebuild Chicago after the fire, and they were having worse conditions in Chicago than they ever had in Europe. So they said, this isn't right. They were pushing for the 40-hour work week. They didn't get it. A lot of things happened that we don't need to dig into. But exactly 40 years later, in May of 1926, we see that Henry Ford starts the 40-hour work week, to the day on May Day celebrating that Haymarket protest. Now, he does the 40-hour work week for a much different reason than what the original protesters wanted. He wanted to sell more cars to his own employees. So just like Henry Ford often does, there's always some ulterior motive. He thought, you know what, if we can have people have a weekend and have a car, they're going to want to get out of the Detroit area and drive around and get out of here, and they're going to buy more cars. And they did. So that was really the beginning of it. And so we think about, okay, 1926, we're talking about just a couple generations ago, meaning that the World War II generation, that's the first generation that experienced the 40-hour work week as their norm. That means the baby boomers are only the second generation to experience that as their norm, and Gen X and millennials are only the third. So less than 100 years ago, we see this 40-hour work week trial start. So now we start to see in the 1990s and 2000s the rise of casual Fridays. We see jeans. We see that that's when people are bringing in donuts and muffins, and it's when we do team building things and baby showers. So we see the death of Friday start to happen in the 90s and early 2000s. I like to say that that Friday has been having an affair with the weekend for a long time. We're just calling it what it is now and saying people really aren't that productive on Friday anyway. So why don't we just move that into the weekend?
Yes. So could you say then, well then, if Thursday is the new Friday, then Thursday they won't be productive either?
Yeah, I think the same thing.
Well, it's interesting. There's been a number of studies that have come out of some European countries that have been testing this out, and a number of other different businesses that I talk about in the book. And if you just type in 4-day work week and start to look at 4-day work week research, we're finding that a 32-hour week is just as productive as a 40-hour week. So it doesn't necessarily have to be on Friday, but working 32 hours instead of 40 hours, we see that people are actually more productive. And part of that is that how much we're doing at work that doesn't have anything to do with our work. Because when you're that stressed, when you have so much going on in your adult life, being a parent, being a spouse, being connected to your community, there's just so much to keep track of. And so, people are leaving early already for their kids' volleyball games. They're already extending their lunches. They're, chatting at the water cooler because their brains just can't take the workload of 40 full hours. So the productivity measures that we're looking at in the research actually show that people aren't, working that full 40 hours anyway. So we might as well just give it to them and be able to do those things outside of work.
Yeah, so totally agree, and I've looked up some research too because of the work we do. So trying to encourage our entrepreneurs that working more does not necessarily correlate to more productivity or more dollars, right? Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit about the science, the case studies, or some of the research you've done around this that actually kind of working less actually become more productive or just slowing down.
Yeah. Well, one thing I like to look at is Parkinson's law. So we may have heard Parkinson's law where work expands to the time given. So the idea, you're in college and you have a paper due and you realize it's due the next day. You stay up all night. It may not be your best writing, but you get it done. Or in your business, you realize a proposal for a new client is due and you forgot about it and you get it done. You don't overthink it. So that's one side of Parkinson's law. The other side is the natural bloating that Parkinson noticed. And he looked at the British Navy and he saw that what would happen is there'd be some new sign-off, some new form that would be added into a system. And it was near impossible once you put some new system into it to remove that system back out. It's very easy to add a new checklist. It's very hard to pull it back out. So what happens when we give ourselves less time, whether we're a solopreneur, whether we're running a huge corporation, no matter where we're at, when we give ourselves less time, we naturally do the things that are best. So if the two of you said, you know what, we're going to work 5 hours less this coming week, would you work on the top 10 things you need to work on or the bottom 10 things? You're naturally going to work on, we've got this high ticket item that we're working on. We've got a new podcast sponsor coming on. We've got, a consulting client, whatever the big ticket things are. You're going to work on those things first. And then the kind of piddly things you're going to ignore, which is a great opportunity to go into that second part of Parkinson's law, to say, how do we chop things out of here? To say, okay, we added this in a couple of years ago. How do we chop it out? So even in my own business, just this morning, we were talking about doing an audit of what social media automations, either in people or in processes, are we paying for? And are they actually working, and would we sign up for those now? So take Pinterest. We had a few pins that we did a few years ago that get, hundreds of thousands of views. But then a lot of our other ones just don't get any views. And so if we're spending $100 or $500 a month on Pinterest in design and putting things there, would we pay $500 a month now to then have pins that basically don't perform? Probably not. but we're going to keep doing what we've been doing because we've always done it. So when we stop and we say, wait a second, let's limit the amount of time we put into it. Where are we dropping the ball? Then we can say, do we even need to keep doing that thing? Maybe we need to outsource it. Maybe we need to automate it, or maybe we just need to cut it.
Yeah. So that's good. It's Parkinson's law, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Just like the disease? Okay. That's good because you gave me some fun facts because we're going to be up in Alaska this week we're leading a business conference. And part of this, there's a section on time.
Oh, nice. Well, if you want me
So
to
just give me a
zoom
fun
in,
fact I could add in there.
if you want me to zoom in, I'm happy to.
Okay. So that's awesome. So talk to us, I mean, because, all makes sense. And I'm sure, listeners are nodding their head. Yep. But the tug, right, for the entrepreneur is, okay, it makes sense. I should slow down. I should work less so I can be more productive. But how do I do that? Because that's how they're wired right now. You're just conditioned to do it. And that's probably the most difficult thing is the mental and emotional, ability to do that. So
yeah,
give us a tip. How can an entrepreneur, be able to do that, can pull back a little bit?
Well, I think one thing to consider is how much have you overvalued work in regards to your ego, in regards to like where your personal value comes from. Now, we all, in my opinion, should do work we love, we feel like it's impacting the world, that we feel good about. I would love for every single person in the world to be able to run after the work that they contribute in a way that they enjoy, that they feel it contributes. And should we have most of our ego wrapped up into how we're making money? I would say no. So what I see is an undervalue of fun and an undervalue of the things that are in the world that also have strong meaning, like family, friends, personal hobbies, things like that. So we actually set up this thing called the +1 -1 exercise that people can do to really start to reveal some of this in themselves, to do as a short-term challenge for themselves, really as an experiment to see if anything comes up for them. So the +1 -1 challenge, what you do is when you're going into your weekend, whether or not you work, 2 days or have 2 days off, have 3 days off, have 1 day off, whatever your weekend looks like, to say, for a +1, what can I add to my weekend that might actually help me feel better on the other side? Because often weekends are in response to that, in reaction to the previous week. I had a busy week, I got to crash, I'm going to sleep in, I'm going to overdrink, overeat, I'm going to lay around. Instead of being in reaction, we want it to be in preparation. How do we have this weekend set us up so that next work week, Monday or Tuesday or whatever our first day is, we come and we're just ready to go? So thinking about what could I add in this weekend? Okay, I'm going to add in a salad. I'm going to add in getting coffee with some friends. I'm going to add in a hike with my kids. Thinking through just one thing that you can try so you can start to build your +1 list of things that help you feel prepared for the next week because you've rested. Second, we have the -1. So what can we remove from our weekend that adds stress, that doesn't feel good, that doesn't set us up for that next week? So maybe every Saturday or Sunday you go grocery shopping and you're terribly busy. Maybe you give yourself permission to have your groceries delivered. As I'm actually saying this, I'm realizing I have been meaning to go to the grocery store for like 3 days and things keep coming up. Why don't I take my own advice and just have groceries delivered? So what can I take off my plate? Maybe you're sick of mowing the lawn or shoveling snow and you're like, okay, I'm going to hire someone this weekend to just shovel my snow and, take that off my plate. So finding those small things, like maybe there's a friend that wants to have coffee with you on Saturday, and that's a toxic friend that you always leave feeling junky about yourself. You're too old for toxic friends. Cancel it and don't reschedule. None of us need to have toxic friends that we don't look forward to at our ages. And so once we do that, we can say, okay, here's the -1s of things that I'm slowly improving the menu of what my weekend looks like so that I can genuinely rest. So the last thing I want to just say is that when entrepreneurs think that they do their best work when they're hustling, when they're running full tilt all the time, let's just stop and say, when do you have your best ideas? It's probably when you're taking a shower. It's probably when you're out for a hike, maybe in the middle of a massage, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I have all these ideas. Or for me, it's the first 10 seconds I try to meditate. I have a notepad next to me and pause it because it's just like, I can't listen to Sam Harris meditation without, having a bunch of ideas in the first 30 seconds. Then I purge those out and I'm ready. As soon as we slow down, that's when we actually get the good ideas, the high level thinking that we're looking for to expand our businesses.
That's awesome. So no, that's some good stuff. So how, practically speaking, okay, we're working 5 days a week, and do you have an example, maybe one of your clients, or because you sound like you've been doing 4-day work weeks since the beginning of time, but like for your clients, like how were they able to go from 5 days to 4? What were some things? I know I'm sure the plus one minus one thing could probably apply, but what were some practical things that did to try and get it down to 4
Fit
days?
it all in.
Yeah. So let's talk through how that could look in the average business. And actually, I have an entire Harvard Business Review article that I wrote walking through this whole process that we can link to in the show notes. So the first thing is we want to look at a 4-day work week as an experiment when we go into it. The big shift from how the industrialists thought of people are mechanical, the world's mechanical, into this post-industrialist world is that we have menu items. It's more like a menu than a prescription. So saying, okay, let's try this in the business or even personally for the next quarter. So then if you're running a business and you're looking at other people joining you in this, or maybe it's just you and your spouse doing it, looking at, let's lump together people that have similar types of roles. So ideally, we don't want to have, an accountant do the 4-day work week and then a marketing person and then someone else. If we're looking at a larger business, when I've worked with them, we want to have a team of 3 to 6 that have very similar roles. So we might do all of the sales team, or we might do all of the accounting team, having those 3 to 6 people meet together. So then the first question we want to ask is, what are the KPIs? What are the key performance indicators that we already judge this position by? So say it's a sales team. Okay, we have a certain number of sales we need to meet annually, quarterly, weekly, monthly, daily, however we structure that out. We have some way that we already view success. What is that? What's the DNA of this position already? Second, we want to say, what's the new DNA that we want to have for this position in regards to our expectations? So we want to do 4-day work week. Do we want to do that where we have 2 days we leave at noon or we come in late? Do we want to do it on Fridays? Do we want to do it on Wednesdays? The whole movement around Thursday is the new Friday isn't about it being Friday that we take off, but it's around saying that we can adjust our businesses to be different. So it may make more sense for you guys to take Wednesdays off because Fridays, all of your customers are in their office and just working on things and they're more available. So figuring that out. So what are the boundaries that we're going to set in regards to these positions? So then we're going to enact the experiment. Week 1, we're going to work those hours. We're going to follow that DNA. And then the first day of the work week, for most that's Monday, you're going to do a quick 15 to 20 minute standing meeting or Zoom meeting, however you want to do it, where you look at that KPI and you look at the DNA of the project. So where were we at numbers wise with sales? Like, are we up? Are we down? If you're up, we're going to say, what happened? Why are we up higher when we only worked 4 days? Oh, I felt so much more efficient. We want to capture that qualitative data so that down the line we can report it out to our supervisor or to the owner, because at some point someone's going to be asked, wait, you're doing the 4-day work week? Like, show me the data on that. We want to be able to speak to that. So our numbers are up this week. Or if our numbers are down, what are we going to do to try to address that this week? And then we want to look at, are there any things that happened that challenge the boundaries that we set as a team? So we all said that, across the board, we're never going to check our email after 5 p.m. every single day so that we can have a life outside of work, and we're going to take Fridays off. Jim from accounting emailed the whole team at 7:30, like, what's going on, Jim? So we have a conversation, and he may say, hey, our European folks or our Pacific folks, they email us every Wednesday. We need to make sure the team gets that. Oh, okay. We need to adjust our boundaries then and say, everyone at 8 p.m. on Wednesdays needs to check their email so they're prepared for Thursday morning. So then you're adjusting it over time, doing quick weekly reports. Each month you do a little longer meeting to summarize what that month was. Are we up in the sales? Are we down? If that's the team. And what have we learned from a qualitative standpoint? And then what can we quantify? What can we have actual numbers behind? So we want to do this a minimum of 3 months so that we don't have 1 month that sales are through the roof and really it was just because people are buying in December. And so it skews it. We want to at least do a full quarter of this experiment because we may have an up or a down month that has many variables outside of just the 4-day work week. After that 3 months, we want to do a summary report that's really no longer than 3 pages. So something that a CEO can quickly scan. Here's what we learned. Here's some of the data. So our sales were actually up by 5%. Here's some qualitative thing. Jim got to go see Susie's volleyball game for the first time ever. Rhonda volunteered to read in her daughter's classroom on Friday. They all say that if this was long term, they definitely stay in a place like this longer. And then what recommendations do you have? Like, should this be rolled out to other teams based on this data? What did you learn that fell flat on its face? And then do we recommend a second round of this?
Well, that's good. Okay, so it's basically market research is what you're talking about. It's like we just don't jump into this 4-day work week, but we measure, we come up with a concept or a hypothesis, and then we come up with some measurements to make sure we can, justify what we've done, and then fix and tweak. And then after 3 months, you say, hey, this may or may not work, and and keep adjusting. But that's good. I mean, because I think that. I think when you first introduced this concept, we could see a lot of entrepreneurs going, there's no way. But I think when you talk about the way you do it and more of a step approach.
Well, I'm thinking too, oh my gosh, am I supposed to get 40 hours into 4 days a week? That's going to be a lot of time on those 4 days working. But that's not what you're saying, so.
No, yeah, I mean, I think that when we look at doing just eliminating a day, for solopreneurs, say you don't have a large company, and it could be married couples that are working together. It could be
who are you talking about here?
Doesn't matter. I mean, say you have a podcast with somebody, and I mean, to even for like the two of you to say, what would it look like if for the last quarter of the year at the time of this recording, or the first quarter of next year, let's just take Fridays off, or pick a day that you really want to take off. It could be Mondays. Maybe you guys hate Mondays and you're like, let's just take Mondays off. Yeah. Let's try that for 3 months, and then see what happens. More often than not, we overthink things like this and then delay, where I would say, why not just take a day off a week, see what happens, prioritize the things that have to happen for your business to be successful. And then from there, after 3 months, say, do we want to pull the plug? So say we end up working 16 less Fridays or 12 less Fridays. Okay, what's that really going to do to the business? Maybe you lose $5,000. I mean, maybe you feel even more connected because every Friday you guys go on date day and you make it an intentional connection day. That may save you a bunch in therapy costs. Who knows?
We actually used to
I think even just doing...
Yeah, we actually used to do, for a little bit, we did once a month on Mondays, we'd go to the beach, because Monday afternoons or 3:30 in the afternoons was always our weekly meeting anyway. So I said, why don't we just take a day or half a day and go to the beach on Mondays? But we haven't done that in a while. And so I think, to your point, it's like, we didn't really miss the day of work. I mean, it was productive because we would talk about business, but we'd also just talk about personal stuff and just enjoy ourselves. But you're right. We just kind of got into the groove of everybody else is, Monday through Friday. Yeah. And then it's been hard, but okay, you challenge us.
Well, and I think
and there are chapters like that. There are chapters like that where, you get running with your business and then you're like, we have to do this for a period of time. But then that recalibration, I think, needs to be a regular part of what we're thinking about.
Well, I think you're going to have to be super intentional about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do.
Yeah.
Because you don't have as much time to just, get sidetracked or do all these other things that probably don't really matter.
Yeah, and I think that's where, especially for entrepreneurs, if they can schedule something into that day, they're typically more successful. So for myself, I had some major health things over the last year, and I'm finally kind of coming out of a lot of that. And I decided, for a while, I'm going to have every other Friday, I'm going to have a 90-minute massage. I'm going to just treat myself to that every other Friday. So it's in the books. My massage therapist has it in her books. It forces me to drop off my kids at school, have my cup of coffee, go over, get a massage, and then it's already, 11:30 or noon on Friday. And so then if I schedule in maybe a lunch with a friend after that, or maybe I schedule in I'm going to go for a hike, the more that we can put things into our calendar that we view as being as important as any client work we're doing or any sort of B2B things that we're doing, if it's in our calendar during that day off, it's a lot easier to say, I have to do that. I put grocery shopping in there so that the weekend I can have with my kids. I put in there that I'm going to, get the car fixed, or I'm going to go watch, I'm going to do all these things on Friday so that I can have fun with my family on the weekend. So maybe it is you straighten your house every Friday or every other Friday. So just finding things you can put in the calendar then makes it that day that you're taking off, okay, this is serving me because I'm getting these things done now instead of when I'm typically doing that, with the kids or when my spouse is off of work.
Yeah.
So the kids haven't ate in a week because you haven't been to the grocery store, huh?
It's nice. We've been working our way through the freezer, and then their grandma dropped off chicken noodle soup.
There you go.
Yeah, we also have a CSA a food share thing, so we get the vegetables and stuff. So we're just out of a couple things like lunch meat, so they can go through the peanut butter.
They're not starving. I don't have to send the kids like $1 a day or something like that.
Yeah, don't send a wellness check with the cops.
Awesome. So you talk about the sprint types in the book. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've heard of personality types, things like that, but our sprint types is how we actually sprint. So many of us may have sprinted and said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to run full tilt towards this my business," and we've heard about batching, and some people say, that just doesn't work for me. So I started to look at the research and created this this model where we look at first, like, when do we sprint? So is it something that we do on a regular basis? So for example, the first Tuesday of every month, I look at, say, the financials with my bookkeeper. Okay. Is that a regular thing? Or I only record podcasts on Thursdays, and we block that out as like podcast recording. We sprint towards podcasting. Or do we have more of a retreat model where we go away for a couple days and we say, okay, I'm going to focus on this one thing or this variety of things. So that's part of it, is the time. When do we do it? Do we do it on regular intervals, or do we do it more on a retreat when we get away? The second part of it is, what do we do when we're sprinting? Some people need to have full focus on one thing. So I'm only podcasting on Thursday. So when I was writing Thursday is the New Friday, every Thursday was when I was working on writing the book. And so it was just the book, so one thing, and it was on Thursdays, so one time. Whereas some people might say, like I heard about this one lady, that she would buy a plane ticket from LA to, I think, Tokyo, spend the night there, and then come back, because she found that she wrote way better when she was on an airplane. And so like her book writing process was, she just bought this plane ticket to Tokyo twice a year.
That's
I know, but like but she needed to do that. Like she would knock out 3 or 4 chapters, on these flights, and be able to get most of the book written. Wow. And so that's her version of a retreat. A friend of mine, Jeremy, that I talk about, he's a psychologist. He finds a Airbnb. He has all these qualifications, like an outdoor space, and it needs to be walking distance from a vegan restaurant and all these different things. And he goes away and he finds different places to go. He plans all his meals ahead of time, but then he has variety. So he's like, I'm going to work on my books in the morning. I'm going to work on my podcasts in the afternoon. I'm going to work on these consulting things and a marketing plan. I'm going to get my social media scheduled for the year. And he just knocks it out. So some people need the variety when they sprint. Some people, and that's not multitasking. That's a myth. That's going to screw up your brain, and you're not going to get as much done. Right. It's intentionally doing a variety of things where you're task switching. Or are you just doing one task? So figuring out with those 4 quadrants, what's your sprint type? Are you just going to focus on one thing on a regular basis? Okay, then this is the strategy you need to take, compared to a retreat that then you go and you do a variety of tasks.
Oh, that's good. That's
so you just have to figure out which one you are. And this,
we have a whole quiz within the book.
Take a flight to Hawaii, honey.
Oh yeah, but I'm not gonna come right back the next day. I want to stay for a couple weeks.
I
know. That's good. You've got a disciple over here, so we're definitely gonna be. So, hey, good timing. It's definitely gonna be recommending this book up in Anchorage. So if you get some sales from Anchorage, all of a sudden, why? Because this.
Well, I don't know what happened, but HarperCollins at the time of this recording just dropped the price on Amazon to like $3 or $4. So I don't know if they over ordered, but it's way on sale right now on Amazon.
Really?
So
is it really?
Yeah. So okay,
get a bunch for timing. All right, perfect timing.
Yeah.
So. Last question, which is basically just open. Like, what last thing would you encourage this entrepreneur to do as they're kind of working toward wanting to do this 4-day work week?
To me, it all starts with when we test slowing down, when we test working less, we start to see more and more of our own humanity. When we enter into any job or work or business that we start, we're wanting to make some sort of impact on the world. Oftentimes we start dreamy-eyed and like, oh my gosh, I could do this. And then the reality of it maybe plateaus. But going back to like, who are we outside of our business? Who are we outside of all the different roles we have? I'm a single dad. I'm also a business owner. I'm also a volunteer. I'm all these different things. But when I strip all that away, like, what is my humanity? And by slowing down, by meditating, by going on retreats, by going on vacations, taking time away in some way, to realize I get to be human. I get to experience this thing that took billions of years to get to this level of evolution. Even just looking at what's happened in the last, 44 years of my life. Like, there wasn't internet when I was born, and now there is. We can talk to each other like, Back to the Future 2 over like a screen. Like, it's mind-blowing what we're experiencing just as a human. And then stepping back and saying, like, why do I push so hard into my achievement being the main driver of my life? We need achievers. We need people that do big things. We need entrepreneurs that are going to go kill it in the world. But also, we need to have them remember their humanity, because if we don't, we make mistakes. We put our efforts into the wrong things. We overspend money on dumb things that we don't need. There's so much more that comes out of slowing down first, so that then on the other side of it, when we want to kill it and go after big things, we go after the right things.
Yeah. That's good. Joe, thank you so much for being here. And you definitely have to go and get the Practice of the Practice podcast. He gets some great guests, don't you say?
Yes, he does.
And definitely pick up the book. Thursday is a new Friday, because I'm sure it's going to change your life for the better. Joe, I've got the link to the Practice of the Practice, your personal website on the show notes. And then definitely I'll make sure to get the Harvard Business Review link, because I think that's a great piece as well. Anything else, how they should follow you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, I know some businesses are looking for a consultant to help with exploring that transition. If people are interested in applying for consulting, that's just practiceofthepractice.com/apply. And then we'll do a half-hour exploratory conversation to hear where you're at and where you're headed. And if it seems like a good use of your time and money, I'll tell you. And if not, then I don't want to work with you.
That's great. So I'm sure you've received a lot of value from this episode, because you're still listening. So please share this with another entrepreneur that needs to hear this, because I think everybody would like to work a little bit less but be more productive, right?
Exactly.
It's not about just working less, but it's being more productive, and that's what you'll get. I know it's counterintuitive to the way we're typically wired, but you're definitely going to benefit from that. And please leave a review, right? So until next week, y'all, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. If you found this episode to be valuable, please leave a rating and share it with an entrepreneur couple you know.
Yes, and remember to hit the subscribe button so that you'll get all of our latest episodes, and visit our website, Power Couples by Design, to access a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business, like our weekly videos and on-demand webinars. And don't forget to download our free 8-step guide that you can find on our homepage to help your marriage and business thrive.
We're here to help you build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business. God bless your marriage and business. See you next week.